Hey friends, it's Alora and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be discussing my 2021 reading goals. Now I don't really remember making very many goals for 2020 in regards to reading other than a numerical goal, which was to hit 100 books again. But this year I wanted to do something a little bit different and make goals that didn't have anything to do with numbers. In fact, many of these goals may actually make it so that I read fewer books, and you'll see why in just a second. So I have 6 reading goals for this year, and the primary goal, if I had to pick just one, is to complete a lot of my unfinished series. I have so many series that I've been super excited about, and I started and I was invested and I was compelled, and then I never picked up the second book. And sometimes it was because the second book wasn't yet out, and so by the time publication date rolled around, I had either forgotten what happened or I wasn't immediately interested. Or maybe even all of the books were out, but I just didn't read them in a row because I tend not to like to read books in a series in a row. I like to break them up with other things. So basically, the situation that we have on our hands here is bad. It's dire. It's horrible. It's not really that bad, but I do have a lot of series that I've begun and I just never finish, and I'm a person who likes to complete things, so it's kind of driving me a little bit crazy. It's like having all of these tabs open in my brain that I haven't been able to close systematically yet. So my main goal this year is to complete at least 12 of my unfinished series. Now I made a list. I have more than 12, let me just tell you that. It was closer to 30 series and it was like 70 books, so I don't think that I'm going to get to them all, but if I can complete 12, I will be very, very pleased with myself. I have already completed one series in January, so I feel like I'm on track. We're doing good. Moving on. The second goal that I have for 2021 is to read at least 20 of my 2020 purchases. Now in 2020, I bought a lot of books. I'm going to be very, very frank. It was a coping mechanism, and I'm not going to judge myself for it because it was a difficult year. But I have a lot of books that I purchased that I haven't gotten around to reading yet. So I don't just want to let them sit on my shelf and gather dust. I do want to actually enjoy them and consume the stories and just obviously read them. So this goal relates to that. And my next goal also relates to my purchases, and that is to try to read at least 70% of the book purchases that I make in 2021. This is lofty for me. This may not be achievable with the other goals in mind, but it will require me to kind of take a step back, be a little bit more measured and considered when I go to buy a book. I also have a big life change happening here really soon, which is very exciting, but will require that I spend less money on extraneous things like lots of extra books. So this will help me kind of pare back on that too. My fourth goal is to check my local bookstore first. Now, I used to work in a small independent bookstore. I worked there for 4 years. I loved it. I love the people. I love the idea of small bookstores. I want them to thrive and I want them to make it through. I want them to be around forever. But I haven't been putting my money where my mouth is. I have honestly been doing a lot of shopping through online outlets, and some of them are better than others of them. One of them in particular I really want to cut back on. I think that we can all guess what that is, Amazon. But I really want to make sure that before I go to buy a book, I check to see if my local bookstore has it first. And sometimes they won't have it, but they'll be able to order it, and I can wait. I mean, I obviously have enough books that I haven't read yet that I could read while I'm waiting. So I just want to be more conscious about that and check my local bookstore. My fifth goal is maybe the one that I'm most excited about, and it's to read more translated work. I read a fair amount of translated work in 2020 because I read a lot of Murakami. So I read a lot of Japanese translations, but I want to read more broadly from the world, and so I plan to read more works that have been translated from a variety of languages this year. My official goal is to read 10 that have been translated, and so far I've read a book that's been translated from French, one that's been translated from Japanese, and I'm in the middle of one that's been translated from Portuguese, so I feel like I'm on track with that. And then my final goal is to kind of dip my toe into the classics pool. Now, I haven't really read a lot of classics since I finished my bachelor's degree several years back. I haven't read any classics in the last few years during grad school, and so I kind of just want to start going there, you know? I have a lot of classics that I've purchased, and my camera battery died because my camera battery always dies. Anyway, so I was talking about classics, right? I really want to read more classics this year. I haven't really read any since my bachelor's degree, and I've been kind of itching to get back into it and to get through a lot of the ones that people talk about most frequently. So I have probably 10 or 12 classics on my shelves that are beautiful editions and that I've really been meaning to read, but I just haven't yet. So I was thinking about making a separate video about those, but my official goal for this year is to get through 5. And I know that's not very many, but classics can take a long time to read. So I was thinking if I read, one every 2 months-ish, that's reasonable. So that's my goal. So those are my 6 reading goals for 2021, and I did actually make a reading journal this year. It's not as beautiful as many people's reading journals are. I mean, the cover is gorgeous. This is the Notebook Therapy Zuki reading journal, and I love it because it has these gold edges, but I will show you a few pictures there. And then I quickly wanted to go over what a monthly spread would look like for me. So my plan is to have this little bookshelf here at the top and write down all of the books that I read as I get through them, and then I also have a bunch of lines here to keep track of stats so that at the end of the year I can look back and kind of have this picture of how I did. So I have a line for the total number of books that I read in the month, the number of books that were 2020 purchases, the number of books that were 2019 or before that purchases, the number of books that I read that were part of a series, and the number of series that I completed in a month, and then the number of translated works, the number of audiobooks, and then I have a couple at the bottom that have to do with my 2021 purchases. So I have books purchased in January, the number, versus how many of those books specifically I read. And then we also have the overall 2021 ratio of books purchased versus read. So I'm really excited about this. I think it'll be a good way for me to keep track of my reading. I've never really had a reading journal before. I used to have one where I just wrote down the books that I read and the order that I read them, but then I discovered Goodreads. Anyhow, thanks for hanging out with me today and going over my 2021 reading goals. Let's see how well I do. I'm really actually committed this year. I'm devoted to doing these things, and that's why I'm trying to keep track of them in this journal, because I feel like if I keep track monthly of my progress on each of these goals, I'll be more motivated to incorporate books that fit the goals each month. All right, let me know down below what one goal is that you've set for yourself this year, and I will talk to you so soon. Until next time, I'm sending you love.